Hello and welcome back to the homestead. Today we're getting started on our next big project, which is starting to clear and expand more pasture area. This spring we cleaned up the trees that we had cut down last year in this area and got the cows out here and started bale grazing them. That's been about 3 months, and as you can see, we've got quite a bit of new grass in here. We had rain pretty much the whole week they were in this bottom paddock, and then it was dry for over a month afterwards. So the first one got a good bit of growth from it being wet while it was raining. The second paddock here was still wet from the previous week's rain, but it had enough to get stuff started. We go up here to the third spot, which was, you can still see the line where the fence division was. There just wasn't any significant growth from the work that the cattle put in because it didn't rain for over a month. Now this little piece is not that big. We just tackled this first because we had already cut down the trees and it was just a matter of getting the trees cleaned up. We are going to have to come back and deal with the stumps at some point, but we've got the light to get the grass growing, and so far, I'd say we have about 50% of this covered with grass. We obviously need a lot more pasture than just this one spot. Our property extends back this way, and we've got these buildings, and there's a section of land on this side over here that goes back about 3 times past the building. And our long-term goal is to clear all of this except for a few assorted shade trees and get all of this into pasture. Last year when we moved here, we came through this section and thinned it. You can see stumps left behind from where we took down some smaller trees, which is why it's relatively open in here, but there's still a lot of big trees. This year we've been running the cows through here and bale grazing just like we did in that new pasture area, but there really hasn't been anything that came up, which I think is 2 reasons. One, the lack of rain that we talked about, but more importantly, in the summer with all these trees, there's just no light that gets back here. For me, the primary goal has been to get down this whole section of trees that borders this building. As you can see, there's leaves and stuff on the roof of the building, which is not good for the building because of those trees. And if we were to get those down, there would be plenty of sunlight that could get into this section. So my goal has been get all these trees around this building from here all the way down here, down this winter. That'll give this whole pasture, but that would then leave this section back here still completely wooded, but that could be a project for another winter, I guess. I've got an idea of how we can get it all done this year, but first, before we do any tree clearing, we've got to get the animals out of here. So what we normally do is use the source fence here as one side and then run out a reel to make the other 3 sides of the paddock. Well, I just grabbed that reel and extended this back to the 4th side. So now this reel is going all the way around this paddock and I can start to pull up this source fence. And then what I can do is take this source fence back to that T-post, take it out here, and run it down to the bottom of their paddock, and I'll basically use this source fence line to close back in this paddock. We'll use that as a perimeter all the way down, because that lane extends all the way back to where we're going on the other side. So now they're reestablishing this paddock with the fence line going down that side, and all I've got to do is pull this wire out once we want to run them this way. And I've got this whole reel lined up and ready to go back this way now. So we can just start walking back this way and we'll create a lane between the source fence and here. So here's the paddock all set up. I had a couple more posts in between the corners after we salvage them from our lane once they get in here, but it's set. And then here's our lane all the way back through here. So now all I gotta do is untie this wire here and let them out into the lane, and then we'll lead them down that way. I'm gonna grab a bucket of alfalfa pellets, even though it's been a few months since they've even had any of those. I think they'll still recognize it in case we need it, but I'm just gonna have it on hand. But I think I can just lead them through here, but we'll see how it goes. Come on, ladies.
Follow him.
Come on, cows. Come on, cows. Come on, cows.
Getting into a stampede here.
Yeah. Come on, cows. Come on, Lena. Come on, cows. Come on,
There
Millie.
she goes. Come on. Yeah.
Come on, cows. Come on, Lena. Come on, ladies. Look at all this grass.
Come on.
There you go. For the first time on this homestead, we've got the cattle out here without any hay, just on grass. It's the next morning. The cows are enjoying their new spot. Last night, we set up this electronet paddock up here for the chickens. So this morning, we'll get the chickens moved up there. There's not much in this paddock in terms of grass that came up, very little. They will scratch this around and then we'll see what comes up. We may end up putting a little bit of seed down in a month or so that this paddock stays consistent with the rest of this section, because it's definitely significantly further behind, but I think it'll be beneficial for this to have them scratch it up and kind of give it a fresh start. And the turkeys, I just moved them a little bit longer each run. You saw where they were back here yesterday morning. Last night when I did chores, I just moved them up to here. Now we'll move them a little ways up to, well, about here. So I got all the animals out of this section. Now all that's left to do is finish picking up this fence wire, pulling these T-posts out, and then this whole section will be completely wide open and ready to start clearing. We've gone around and flagged some of the trees that we want to keep. We're keeping probably about a dozen or so trees around the property line border, and then maybe another half a dozen kind of inside the pasture to serve as some shade trees. But we want to get the majority of them out of here so that we can get enough light to grow good grass. I saw this trick online for pulling out posts by yourself, and I figured I'd give it a try because, well, you know, everything you see on YouTube is correct. So the concept is you just make a loop of chain like this to where when you curl the bucket out, it will go behind the post, and then as you curl up, it'll tighten. Probably would be a little bit easier if I had hooks on top of the bucket to hook the chain to, but I've got it hooked in underneath, but hopefully it'll work. Not sure how much it actually helps because you still have to get off the tractor to pull the post out, and honestly, I'll have to look at the clip, but I don't know that the chain actually did anything. What I did there is what I've always done, which is just hook the lip of the bucket on the barbs on the T-post, and then you just pop it out like that. Sure would be nice if somebody did something about all these trees in here. Make it a whole lot easier to get around with the tractor. That trick works just fine for me. You just grab the post. So why are we doing this now? And how am I going to get all this cleared? Well, the why is simple. The timing's right. The property that's adjacent to ours back here is about 40 acres of planted pines that is about 15 years old. For forest that's managed for timber the way that is, it's customary at around 15 years to come through and thin it, pulling out the smaller and weaker trees to allow more light for the healthier trees to continue to grow bigger and produce larger, higher quality trees. Well, last week they started that process over on this property. So I walked over and talked to the logger who's doing that work and said, well, you got all your equipment over here and you got lanes going right back to your truck that runs straight to our property line. What do you think about coming over and logging this little piece that we've got? Is that something you'd be interested in? So he came out here, we walked it, and he said, yeah, I'll do that. It sounds like he'll be finished up thinning this as early as tomorrow or maybe the next day. And then he's gonna start working his way in here. Now, there's going to be a lot more work for me to do after this is all said and done. He's going to get the majority of the trees on the ground, and anything that's worth selling, he's going to take and sell. But there's going to be piles of treetops and limbs that don't go along, and there's going to be, as well as all the little small trees like this stuff in here that's not worth anything. And there's also going to be stumps that I have to deal with. But if I was doing this all myself, I'd have all that stuff to deal with as well. So this is going to be a huge help for us to get all these trees out of here. And then it's just going to be a matter of dealing with the brush and starting to get this cleaned up. But the timing really couldn't be any better. It's the end of August. We'll be able to start bale grazing this fall and start to get some grass established in here yet this fall. This is going to be a huge help for us, and the timing just worked out right that the logger happened to be right there with all his equipment. It would cost him more to haul all the equipment that he has over here and build a road to get in here to be able to do this than he would make. So he wouldn't do it with all this big equipment. He would just have to come in and do it by hand. And I don't even know if there's enough here that would be worth him doing it that way. So it's just really fortunate for us that he happened to be right over here and is willing to come do this, and this should give us a big head start on getting this into pasture, and hopefully by this time next year we'll have some decent grass back here. And thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you back here next time.